After completing my 10th class exams in 1979, my father suggested that I go and help my father's uncle and learns astrology. Mathematics being my favorite subject, I learned the calculations. My grandfather taught me how to calculate the inclinations of each planet and how to calculate the Lagna and the meridian center MC. And he gave me some birth charts to draw. Thus, I learned how to draw the birth charts first and showed interest in predictions. So my grandfather told me some predictions, some of the tips that he usually uses for predictions. And after learning those tips, I documented some of them. I verified with my father. While my father and my grandfather have laid the foundation for me to get interested in astrology, for almost a decade or 2 decades, I didn't show any interest.
Welcome to Sastry Karra's Astrological series. In this video presentation, I'm going to explain the various techniques and the procedure that I used to analyze the possibility for a native to get married. The rule of thumb is for when you want to find out the possibility for a native to get married, the rule of thumb is to look at the seventh house, the planets in that seventh house, the planets that are aspecting the seventh house, and the seventh house lord. I usually, apart from just the seventh house, I do look at the other important houses, because according to Indian tradition, marriage is just a sacred ritual, and for that sacred ritual to happen, there are a lot of other dependencies. For example, the second house is Kutumbasthanamu, that means starting a family. So, according to the Indian rich culture and traditions, a person cannot start a family without getting married. Thus, the second house depends on seventh house and vice versa. The same way it goes to the fourth house. The fifth house is house of children, Putrasthanamu. The ninth house is Dharmasthanamu, which tells you whether the native will get married as per dharma of that era or not. And then the 11th house is Kamasthanamo, or the desires, whether the native gets the desires that is supposed to get for after getting married. And the 12th house is the Mokshasthanamo, the pleasures of bed. So I usually look, apart from the 7th house, I look at the second house, the fifth house, the fourth house, the fifth house, the ninth house, just to verify, to make sure that the native is getting married within is as per dharma or not, which is rarely it's not that important for me when I look for the possibility for a native to get married, but I just look at it. And then the 11th house, the house of desires, and the 12th house, the pleasures of bed. So once I look at all these houses, I then go ahead and summarize the data that I found out on the Rashi chart, and then try to conclude some sort of a conclusions. Let me go and explain to you how I summarize that. Please note that when we do analysis of any birth chart and come to some sort of a conclusion, the conclusions are basically based upon the planetary combinations that one can look at it in the native Rashi chart or the birth chart, and those planetary combinations only provide the opportunity for the native for an event to happen to the native. Now, will that event happen? It is up to the native. If the native does not sense the opportunity, the signals of the opportunity that the native is receiving, then the planetary combination will become worthless. Remember, even in English, they say there is an old saying, opportunity knocks the door only once. So even in astrology also it is the same. The planetary combination that provides an opportunity for an event to happen, the same planetary combination to repeat it is very, very rare. As I said earlier, the rule of thumb is just to look at the seventh house and then figure it out whether the native gets married or not. And also sometimes people look at even the Vamshottari Dasas to see whether the whatever the planets that are, whatever the Mahadasa and the Antardasa is currently running, based on that some people come up with a conclusion. Occasionally the afflictions of the second house, fourth house, 12th house is checked along with the 7th and 11th houses. As I said earlier, if any of these houses are afflicted or have a malefic planet, or have a direct aspect of a malefic planet on these houses, or a malefic planet owns these houses, then there is a second thought is needed to, before we come to conclusion when is the possibility for the native to get married. Here comes the first step that I take it when I am trying to analyze the possibility for a native to get married. As you can see on the screen, I create this table for the second house, the fourth, the 7th, the 12th. First of all, I take all these, and then I look at the 5th and the 11th also. What I look at is what are the planets are there, which planets are there in these houses, and who is the lord of that house, and where is that lord residing, and which houses is the lord aspecting, I mean which planets is the lord aspecting, and which planets are aspecting this house. And to go more in detail, I go like the nakshatra, house lord nakshatra, who, and then what is the relationship for the nakshatra, for that house lord nakshatra with the Janma Rasi. And if I think that the time of birth is correct, then I take the house inclination and then go and look at who is the Kaksha lord for that house lord. So when you take all that information and put it in this spreadsheet or in this table, you will have a clear understanding of which houses got afflicted, and that will give you some sort of an idea what is the degree of difficulty for the native to get married. So let's go and look at further down. Here is something that I take a special consideration if the native is a female. What I do is that since Jupiter is the Karaka for marriage for women, and Rahu and Saturn are the most malefic planets, I look at, if I cannot figure it out, a clear path for on the native's chart for the possibility of the native getting married with Rashi Lagna and Chandra Lagna, then what I do is that I take the Jupiter, wherever the natal Jupiter is residing, I take that as the Lagna, and then look at the 7th house from the natal Jupiter, and then repeat the same process. And even if I cannot figure it out even at that point, that means the chances are very, very high for the native to remain unmarried. And then I go and look at what is the primary reason for this native not to get married. Once I complete reading the chart, the planetary combinations, all those things, then what I do is that I go and look at two unique techniques, the two methodologies that were found by sage Bhrigu, which one of it is the Bhrigu Chakra Padathi and the other is the Bhrigu Sarla Padathi. For Bhrigu Chakra Padathi, I start looking at who is the cycle ruler starting from age 21, and I go all the way up to age 35. The same thing I do for Bhrigu Sarla Padathi. I look at all the important age related Bhrigu Sarla Padathi rules between age 21 and 35, and that will give me an idea like when, based upon the planetary combinations, whatever the a temporary conclusion that I came up with, I use these two methodologies tell me whether my temporary conclusion is correct or not. As I said, let's go and look at the Bhrigu Chakra Padathi. When you look at the Bhrigu Chakra Padathi, at the age of 21, at the age of 23, once the native completes that age 23, 23rd birthday, and that means the native is on in 24th year. At the age of 24, Mercury will activate the 12th house from Rashi Lagna. So if Mercury is the 7th house lord, that means the 7th house lord is activating the 12th house, which is the pleasures of bed. If Mercury is the 2nd house or a 5th house or the 12th house lord, then that tells you that Mercury plays a vital role here for the native to get married. And then once the native completes her or his 24th birthday, from there all the way till 36th birthday, the Venus is the cycle ruler, and you can see Venus activating some of the important houses pertaining to marital life here. So those are the times that I pick it and see if there is any, if Venus, the cycle ruler, is activating any of these houses from Rashi Lagna, or the ruler or the house that it is activating from its natal position, are those houses strong enough to get the native married. So it's this Bhrigu Chakra Padathi will tell you whatever the previous decisions that you made it with the planetary combinations, whether what are the possibilities. That means in planetary combinations you have a wide range of possibilities. In Bhrigu Chakra Padathi you are narrowing it down to possible 4 or 5 periods, and then look at those periods using Bhrigu Sarla Padathi. Here you can, as I said, when it comes to the Bhrigu Sarla Padathi, theoretically we can start from the age 21. That means once the native completes the 21st birthday. But these days, in this era, the native gets married probably after, if it is a female then it will be after 25, and if it is a male then it is around 28. So I don't look at any of these Bhrigu Sarla Padathi rules until the native completes the 25th birthday. And that means here, this is how, then I start with the rules between 26th birthday and 27th birthday, which is Mars is the one that activates the 10th house according to rule. And most importantly, I look at the Bhrigu Sarla Padathi rules between 27th birthday and after 27th birthday and before 28th birthday, because Saturn is the one that activates the most the 6th house. And if Saturn is the lord of the 7th house, then, and depending upon where the Saturn is residing, if the 6th house is either the 2nd, 4th, 7th or 12th houses, then Saturn is activating the ability for the native to get married. If for some reason the native does not get married even before the 28th birthday, then I go all the way up to the 31st birthday, and I look only at this point I look only at the Karaka for marriage, no one else, because abilities for the other house lords to make the marriage event happen is lost. So now the Karaka is the only one that is left here to do something. And so that's the reason why I look at the Jupiter, the Karaka for women, and see whether that Jupiter anyway will help the native to get married or not.
Now that I had given you the theory behind what are the techniques that I use to analyze a native's chart to predict the possibility of a marriage event. Before we do the predictions, I would like to take one example that and then do the analysis first to see how to follow the rules for the predictions. So as an example here, I took the birth chart of late Mrs. Indira Gandhi, who was the Prime Minister of India. Indira Gandhi was born in 1917 and she got married in 1942. That is approximately 23 to 24 years old. So there are a number of reasons why I had chosen this native's chart for analysis. The primary one is, if you look at the birth chart, from Rashi Lagna, Saturn is the 7th house lord, and from Chandra Lagna, Moon is the 7th house lord, and Saturn is residing in the 1st house from Rashi Lagna. That means when you look from Rashi Lagna, Moon and Saturn are having Parivartana Yoga. When you look from Chandra Lagna, naturally 7th house will be Moon will be the lord of the 7th house, and Moon is residing in the 7th in the 1st house. Owner is Saturn, and Saturn is residing in the house owned by Moon. That means they are having a Parivartana Yoga again. So either whether you look from Rashi Lagna or Chandra Lagna, there is a Parivartana Yoga between Saturn and Moon, and both of them being the lord of the 7th house, either from Rashi Lagna or Chandra Lagna. So this is a very unique planetary combination that particularly pertaining to 7th house, that was the main reason why I had chosen Indira Gandhi's birth chart for this analysis. And next, when you look at it, the reason for marriage. First of all, let's not worry about whether it's a love marriage, interreligion or intercaste, anything like that. Only our primary aim is to predict the to do the analysis when she got married and look at the different techniques and figure it out what is the reason for the native to get married. Because Saturn and Moon are so powerful, what we have to look at is how are these two planets behaving when the native has attained 21 years old. That means, so we first go to the Bhrigu Chakra Padathi, look at what is the period when the native turned 21, and look at the time when the native got married. So you will have an idea, like according to Bhrigu Chakra Padathi, who was the cycle ruler at the time of marriage, and then you can come back here to this chart and identify the reasons why the native got married with that planet as the cycle ruler. We had seen the natal chart earlier. Now let's go and look at the important planets and the houses from Rashi Lagna for this native, and our primary intention is only to figure it out when is the possibility for the native to get married. Before we find out what is the possibility for the native to get married, first we have to see is there the marriage yoga for this native. So the first thing you do is go through Rashi Lagna and look at all the important houses pertaining to marriage and marital life. Then repeat the same with Chandra Lagna. If you don't find any positive things from Rashi Lagna and Chandra Lagna, then if the native is a female, then you take natal Jupiter's position as ascendant and then repeat the same. Let's go and start looking from, since we know that this native got married on 26th March 1942, let's go and start looking at the native's chart from Rashi Lagna and look at the important houses. The second house is Kutumbasthanamu, the ability to start a family. So for this native, the second house lord is Sun, and the Sun is in the 5th house from Rashi Lagna, and the Sun is aspecting the 11th house from Rashi Lagna. So
let's go and see who is residing in the second house, because that is on. Okay, in second house Mars is residing, and Mars is the lord of the fifth house. If you look at it, the second house lord is residing in the fifth house, and the fifth house lord is residing in the second house. That's a parivartana yoga. That's a strong relationship between the second and the fifth house. Is one of the primary reasons for the need for the to say that yes, the native will get married sometime in her life. But that is what how you start with. And now fortunately I don't see any planets aspecting the second house. So let's go to the fourth house. Fourth house is Sukhasthanama, or home life environment. Fourth house lord is 1 2 3 4. Fourth house lord is Venus. Venus is in the sixth house from Rashi Lagna, so naturally it will have its direct aspect on the 12th house. 12th house is pleasures of bed. And then the disadvantage is Venus is co-joined with Rahu in the sixth house. That means Rahu is also looking at the 12th house, the pleasures of bed. And who is residing in the fourth house? On this chart, the fourth house is empty, and I don't see any planet aspecting the fourth house. So the second and fourth houses, you see that no malefic planets are aspecting, and apart from Mars, no malefic planets are residing too. So we'll at this point, let's not worry about Mars being a malefic. Next, fifth house. Mars is the lord of the fifth house, and it's residing in the second house from Rashi Lagna. And Mars has three aspects. The first one is on the fourth aspect is 1 2 3 4. The fourth aspect is on the fifth house. Wow. The seventh aspect is on the eighth house. Oh my gosh. And the eighth aspect is on the ninth house. So if you look at it, Mars is residing in the second house owned by Sun. Sun is residing in the fifth house owned by Mars. And I told you that this is the primary, one of the strong reason why the native had the possibility to get married. Not only that, natal Mars fourth aspect is directly on the fifth house, its own house, and it's looking at the second house lord too. That's very important. And then Mars is also in fifth house. If you see in fifth house, along with the second house lord, you see another important house lord, Mercury, that is the 12th house lord, which is pleasures of bed. So here Mars, Sun, Mercury, all these three having that interrelationship is made the possibility for the native to get married sometime. So this is how you have to look at it. Will the native get married? That's the first question you have to ask yourselves. If you think that there is a possibility for the native to get married, then go to the Dasa Systems, Bhrigu Chakra Padathi to narrow it down, and the Dasa Systems to further narrow it down and come to a possible period for the ability for the native to get married. Now let's go to the seventh house. Seventh house lord is Saturn. Saturn is in the first house. So it has three aspects on the third, the seventh, and 10th houses. And let's go and see who is residing in the seventh house. Moon, the first house lord, Lagnadipati, is residing in the seventh house, and Moon's direct aspect is on the first house, its own house, and Saturn is residing. See, there is another Parivartana Yoga between Moon and Saturn. Saturn is residing in the house owned by Moon, and Moon is residing in the house owned by Saturn, and they are looking at each other. It's another second reason to say that yes, there is a high possibility for the native to get married. Now let's go to the 11th house. Venus is the lord of the 11th house, and Venus is in the 6th house, Rogasthanamo, oh gosh, and having a direct aspect on the 12th house. Just to, I don't want to go out of the track, but the 11th house lord, when the 11th house lord is residing in the 6th house, that indicates that there is a issue when it comes to the house of desires, which is 6th house being the Rogasthanamo, and when they are directly having a look at the 12th house, which is the pleasures of bed. So the issue, the possibility for the native to get her or his desires fulfilled when it pertains to the 12th house, that is the pleasures of bed, is minimal due to some sort of medical illness to his or her spouse.
This is something that it's very important to see. Once you think that the Neetu has the ability to get married, then, and if you want to look further down, like how will be the marital life, this is how. First go to the 11th house, see the 11th house lord, and see where the 11th house lord is residing. And here the 11th house lord is co-joined with Rahu, another bad malefic planet. So you can understand, those who know her history will know what I'm trying to explain. Now coming to the 11th house, Jupiter is the Karaka for marriage, is in the 11th house, and Sun and Mercury, the 2nd and 12th house lords, are having a direct aspect on the 11th house. Now let's go to 12th house. Mercury is the lord of the 12th house, and Mercury is residing in the 5th house and having a direct aspect on the 11th house. And in 12th house you have Ketu, and Rahu and Venus are having a direct aspect on the 12th house. As I said earlier, you can understand why Rahu's direct aspect, what are the impact of Rahu having a direct aspect on the 12th house. Let's first go and look at the main chart with the Chandra Lagna. Then look at the important places, planets and important houses pertaining to marriage predictions. If you look at this from Chandra Lagna, the important houses as usual are the 2nd, 4th, 5th, 7th, 11th and 12th houses. All these are very important when you are trying to predict the possibility for a Neetu to get married. So with Chandra Lagna, moon as the natal moon position as the ascendant, what you see is that the 2nd house from Chandra Lagna is, the owner is Saturn. Yes, Saturn is the owner, and that Saturn, the 2nd house lord, is residing in the 7th house from natal moon, and residing in 7th house from natal moon, that second house lord Saturn is having a direct aspect on the 1st house, that is the Chandra Lagna, the way the moon is residing. And now go and look at from moon in the 2nd house, are there any planets? No, it is empty. And then are there any planets aspecting that empty house? When you look at it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, Mars, who is in the 4th house, Mars is in the 4th house from natal moon, not the 4th house, this is the 4th house lord, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Mars is the 4th house lord from natal moon. And that particular Mars is residing in the 8th house and having a direct aspect on the 2nd house from natal moon. This is very important to see. Mars reside, the 4th house lord from natal moon, is residing in the 8th house and having a direct aspect on the 2nd house. Let's go and look at the next one, is the 4th house. Mars is the lord of the 4th house. I said Mars is in the 8th house. So Mars will aspect the 4th, 7th and the 8th aspects. 4th one is the 11th house, 7th is the 2nd house and the 8th is the 3rd house. And when you look at the 4th house from natal moon, 1, 2, 3, 4, the house is empty and no one is aspecting that house. That's a good sign. That's actually, to be frank, this was one of the reason why the Neetu even had the ability to get married. Let's not worry about that now. 5th house. Venus is the lord of the 5th house, and if you look at it in 5th house from natal moon, Jupiter is residing. And who is looking at the 5th house from natal moon? Mercury and Sun. Mercury and Sun are having a direct aspect on the 5th house from natal moon. And when you look at Venus, who is the lord of the 5th house, that Venus is residing in the 12th house from natal moon, co-joined with Rahu, and they both are having a direct aspect on the 6th house from natal moon. Then the 7th house, moon is the lord of the 7th house from natal moon, residing in the 1st house, aspecting its own house. And in the 7th house from natal moon, what you see is Saturn is residing, and the planet that is aspecting this Saturn is again moon. So moon is aspecting Saturn and Saturn is aspecting moon. That's another thing that we have to keep in mind when it comes to the marital life for this Neetu. The 11th house lord is again Mars, and we had gone through it. And the 12th house lord, this is very important. From natal moon, the 12th house lord is Jupiter. Jupiter is the Karaka for marriage, and Jupiter is the lord of the 12th house from natal moon. 12th house is pleasures of bed. So you can see the relation. The Karaka for marriage owns the house for pleasures of bed. And now let's go and look at where is this Jupiter from natal moon. From natal moon, Jupiter is in the 5th house, and how many? It has 3 aspects. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 5th aspect is on the 9th house, the 7th aspect is on the 11th house, and the 9th aspect is on the 1st house from natal moon. That means Jupiter, this is very important here, Jupiter residing in the 5th house and lord of the 12th house is aspecting the 1st house from natal moon. That means it's looking at moon, and look, moon is the lord of the 7th house again. So this complex relationship is another reason why you can see what made this native to get married even when you have this many troubles. You can see, like, the first trouble is moon and Saturn, the second trouble is from moon and Mars, and the third trouble is Rahu in the 12th house. When you have so many negativities but still the native got married, is because of all these things. Now let's go to Bhrigu Chakra Padathi. The reason why I prefer to go to Bhrigu Chakra Padathi immediately is because the native is already married and we are doing the analysis. So first, when you go to, we know the date of marriage for Mrs. Indira Gandhi was 26th March 1942. So when I look at the Bhrigu Chakra Padathi with the date of birth as the 19th November 1917, at the age after the native completed her 23rd birthday and before the 24th birthday, it is November 1940 through 1941, and then the native got married after she completed her 24th birthday. So a number of things might happen between November 1940 and November 1942 that resulted into this event. So we have to look at both the sides of it. Did anything happen between 1940 and 1941 from an astrological perspective? So first of all, let's go and look at it. We know that Mercury activates the 12th house from Rashi Lagna. 12th house is the pleasures of bed. And so let's go and look at who is the lord of, what is Mercury? Mercury is the lord of the 12th and 3rd houses. That means Mercury is activating its own house, which is the 12th house. Fine. And now, so there is a very high possibility for the native to get married during this period according to Bhrigu Chakra Padathi. Now that we knew that Mercury is activates the 12th house from Rashi Lagna, let's go and look at where is Mercury. Mercury is in the 5th house from Rashi Lagna. So the 12th house from natal position is the 4th house. So you see that Mercury is activating the 12th house from Rashi Lagna, which it owns. 12th house leads is the pleasures of bed, and Mercury also activates the 4th house, which is the 12th house from its natal position, and 4th house means home life environment. Here, when you look at it, the 4th house lord is Venus. Venus is the next cycle ruler. So when Mercury has activated all these things, either Mercury has to do it or the next guy is Venus, who is the Karaka for marriage for both men and women, will be doing it. So to the best of my knowledge, this is, I don't know how far it's true, whether it is a gossip or real, there were some tensions between Indira Gandhi and her father Jawaharlal Nehru about Indira Gandhi getting married to a Muslim boy. That was somewhere between 1940 and 1942. So go back to the birth chart. You will see that the moon and Saturn, who were the 7th house lords, had a Parivartana yoga and they were looking at each other directly. Moon is the mind in general and moon is the Matrakaraka. So the native was so stubborn to get married to the person that she has decided. That's what moon is telling you. And Saturn, the 7th house lord, is telling you that moon, whatever the moon has decided, Saturn is supporting it. So the combination of the powerful direct aspect between moon and Saturn is one of the reason why you see the native will be so stubborn and some sort of a marriage thoughts or something pertaining to that has started after 13th November 1940. According to Bhrigu Chakra Padathi, it is the Mercury who might have initiated all these things. So there was we have no reason, no idea why it did not happen before 1941 November. So when you look at it, the date of marriage is 26th March 1942. So the first thing you have to do look at is Venus. Venus activates the first house. In first house, you have Saturn, the 7th house lord, and the first house lord moon is residing in 7th house. There it goes. There is no way one can stop it. And now let's go and look at what is Venus. Venus is the lord of the 4th house and 11th houses. Okay, that means 4th house is home life environment and 11th house is house of pleasures or kamasthanamo. So Venus being the lord of 4th and 11th houses is sure to when it activates the first house and the 7th house lord residing there and the first house lord looking at first house and the 7th house lord, it's clear that the native will get married during that period. There's no other reason to say that the possibility is minimal. Now when you look at Venus, from there the natal position, it says that Venus activates the first house, which is the 6th house from Rashi Lagna and the 12th house from Chandra Lagna. And when you look at it, Venus is residing in the 12th house from Chandra Lagna and Venus is looking at the 12th house, is having a direct aspect on the 12th house from Rashi Lagna. Either of the way, whether from Rashi Lagna, which is the destiny, or the Chandra Lagna, which is your mind, the 12th house got activated even at this during this time. Also 12th house is the pleasures of bed. So when you look at the way the things the planets had got activated and the houses that it has activated based upon the Bhrigu Chakra Padathi, you can clearly say that the native will get married somewhere between November 1940 through November 1943. That's for sure, because Venus is in the 2nd house. Even in November 1942 through November 1943, there is a possibility in case if she didn't get married before 1942. Because Venus activates the 2nd house, which is the moon, where moon is residing. And the 2nd house from Venus, natal position Venus, is the 7th house from Rashi Lagna. And Venus and then Venus activates the 2nd house from Rashi Lagna, which is the sun owns it, and 2nd house is the Kutumbasthanamu. So either of the way, when without knowing the date of her marriage, if you look at it using Bhrigu Chakra Padathi, you can come to a conclusion, temporary conclusion, that there is a high possibility for the native to get married between November 1940 and November 1943. And here we see it as her getting married in November 1942. So this is how, when you consider the Bhrigu Chakra Padathi for predicting the possibility of marriage, this is how you have to look at it. Now that we had Bhrigu Chakra Padathi gave you a rough idea about what are the possibilities for the native to get married, let's go and look at between November 1940 and November 1943 the different Dasa systems. First and the foremost, I start with Vimshottari Dasa. So according to Vimshottari Dasa, the Rahu Mahadasa, Saturn Antara Dasa, and is is the main between 1941 through 19, is it 1940 or 41? 1 second please. Yeah, it's from 1940 to 1943 is the Rahu Mahadasa and Saturn Antardasa, because Saturn is in 1941 December. And then if you go further deep into it, Saturn Pratyantara Dasa is 1941 December through 1942 June, and the Moon Sukshmantara Dasa is 1942 March through 22nd through April 4th. So on the date of marriage, you have Rahu Mahadasa, Saturn Antardasa, Saturn Pratyantara Dasa, and Moon Sukshmantara Dasa. I have clearly explained the role of Saturn and Moon, how they made this native to get married. And now comes the question is, how come the Rahu, why did the Rahu come into picture? Look at Rahu. Rahu is in the 6th house. That's fine. So when it is in the 6th house from Rashi Lagna, it is looking at the 12th house. It is directly aspecting the 12th house, which is the pleasures of bed. And from Moon, Rahu is residing in the 12th house itself. So, and that too co-joined with the most powerful, the 4th house, 4th and 11th house Lord. 4th house, the home life environment, and 11th house is Kamasthanama. Now that Rahu has a relationship with the Lord of Kamasthanamo and Sukhasthanamo, and Rahu is directly aspecting the 12th house from Rashi Lagna, and Rahu is residing in the 12th house from Chandra Lagna. And the most important thing, this is the period where during that era the possibility is very high for a female to get married is after the age of 20. So the Rahu Mahadasa has cooperated the native to get married as per the Antardasa, Pratyantara Dasa and Sukshmantara Dasas. As I said, let's go and look at another Dasa system, which is the Yogini Dasa. And if you look at the Yogini Dasa, at the time of marriage, Sun Mahadasa is running, which is from 1941 July through 1943 July. That's exactly the same period that we predicted, narrowed down based on the Bhrigu Chakra Padathi. We narrowed it down to 1940 November through 1943 November. So here Sun Mahadasa is there. So let's go and look at what's the Sun. Sun is the 2nd house Lord, Kutumba Sthanadipati. And Kutumba Sthanadipati from Rashi Lagna is residing in 5th house, which is the Putra Sthanamo. And Sun is co-joined with Mercury, who is the Lord of the 12th house. And above all, in 5th house, Lord is Mars. Mars is residing in the 2nd house owned by Sun, and Sun is residing in the 5th house owned by Mars. So, not only that there is a Parivartana Yoga between Saturn and Moon, you can see a Parivartana Yoga even between Sun and Mars. That is the another reason why particularly the Sun Mahadasa has became the more crucial from as per the Yogini Dasa for the native to get married. The native might have got the possibility for the native to get married after Sun Mahadasa is very minimal, but here Sun is so powerful that it has to make it happen. And now comes the question is, what is the Antardasa? The Antardasa is Mercury. Well, Mercury is in the 5th house, co-joined with Sun, and Mercury is the Lord of the 12th house. So there's no explanation is needed. So let's go a little bit deeper to see what is the Pratyantara Dasa. As per the Yogini Dasa, Sun is the Mahadasa, Mercury is the Antardasa. Let's go to Pratyantara Dasa. There is two possibilities in Pratyantara Dasa. The first possibility is the Rahu being the Pratyantara Dasa or Moon being the Pratyantara Dasa, because if Moon is a Pratyantara Dasa on March 26th, 1942, the Moon Pratyantara Dasa started at 1 a.m. So I'm hoping that that is the one which we need to consider. And I already explained you earlier how Moon and Saturn have played a vital role in for this native to get married. The next one, next Dasa system that I want to, that I usually look at is the Sudarshana Chakra Dasa. In Sudarshana Chakra Dasa, what you need is, we will assume that this is very crucial. The assumption is that the time of birth is precise. If there is any difference in in time of birth, if up to the maximum of 20 minutes or 30 minutes, if it is more than that, then the Sudarshan Chakra Dasa might, you might get a wrong data for this Sudarshan Chakra Dasa. So assuming that the native's time of birth is clear, the ascendant is 27 degrees 27 minutes. So in Sudarshan Chakra Dasa, those who know how to calculate the Sudarshan Chakra Dasa, here you see it. There's a long calculations. I think it is somewhere in Scribd website where I wrote down how to do calculate the Sudarshana Chakra Dasa for a native. So if I put in this spreadsheet where it automatically calculates, when I put the date of birth and then the Lagna as 27 degrees 27 minutes, what I found is the cycle. Now you have to see how many. The first one is over, the second, and the first and the 12th, this is first, second, third, fourth cycle. So the fourth cycle is starting from 1940 December 19th through December 1952. So the native has to get married during one of these cycles, and now 1940, by the time the native turns 19 in 1940, the native will be around 21 years. So that's the reason why I had chosen the fourth cycle. And now that we knew that when the native got married, when I went deeper into the fourth cycle, the sub-cycle is second house. The second house sub-cycle, the primary house is 1st to 12th, and the second house sub-cycle second house. The cycle started from December 1949 to 1942 December. So in the fourth cycle, when the second house got activated, during that period the native got married. Now when you go to look at the Antardasa is between is the fourth house, which is from February 1942 to March 19th 1942, and the fifth house is from March 1942 to April 18th 1942. Either of the way, the second house is the Kutumbasthanamu, the fourth house is Sukhasthanamu, and the fifth house is Putrasthanamu. All these three houses are very crucial when it comes to a marital life. So the Sudarshana Chakra has clearly showing you that at the time of marriage, this Dasa system also cooperated the native. That's another reason why the native got married at that time. Let us now go and look at the Dasapati, Antardasapati Dasa system and see how, when the native got married, what is the main the Mahadasa, which planet is the Mahadasa and which planet is Antardasa. Dasapati, Antardasapati Dasa systems is a unique way of calculating it, and in Scribd, there was one of my article that I wrote it, how to calculate it, all those. It's available in Scribd. Those who are interested can go over there and try to find out, and then they can go through it. Now coming to this chart, she got married on 26th March 1942. So according to Dasapati Antardasapati Dasa system, Mercury Mahadasa started in August 1940 and went all the way till August 1947. So let's go and see how far is Mercury responsible for the native to get married. if you look Mercury from Rashi Lagna, Mercury is the 12th house lord, the pleasures of bed. And from Rashi Lagna, Mercury is in the 5th house, Putrasthanamu. Also, Mercury is co-joined with the Sun, house of the second house lord. So, when you look from Rashi Lagna, where Mercury is very powerful when it comes to the possibility for the native to get married. So, let's go and look at from the Chandra Lagna. From the Chandra Lagna, Mercury is in the 11th house, house of desires, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Mercury is the lord of the 6th and 9th houses. So, it has nothing to do with that. So, because of the strong possibility from the Rashi Lagna, which is your destiny, Mercury Mahadasa here for this native helped the native to get married. So let's go and look at the Antardasa. When you look at the Antardasa, it's very close to Mercury / Mars. Yes, Mercury / Mars. So look at, again from the Rashi Lagna, look at the Mars. Mars is the lord of the 5th house, residing in the 2nd house. And 2nd house lord is residing in 5th house. 5th house lord is residing in 2nd house. There you go. That Parivartana Yoga has made the Mars to be responsible not only to fulfill the Putrasthanamu responsibility, is by activating the Kutumbasthanamu. That means allowing the native to start a family and then have children. So, when you look at this, even this Dasapati system and the Dasapati system clearly tells you how easy it is to predict the possibility for a native to get married based on the planetary Mahadasa and Antardasa.